guys, so I am here to give you a little tutorial about teaching your dog to station or go to a mat and stay there for whatever duration you want them to. Now, this behavior can be used in a lot of different ways. I used it for Jane here because when I was preparing breakfast for all my dogs, it was quite a process. I have 5 dogs plus my cat. I feed them all a raw diet. It takes me a while. I'm up at the counter. Jane was very, very enthusiastic about her food, so she barked and barked and barked while I did this. So I had to figure out a solution very quickly, so that's why I taught her to station. But I want you to consider any behavior that your dog does that you don't want them to do, you can teach them to station instead. So, when people come to the house and you don't want them jumping up on guests, teach them to station instead. If you don't want your dog begging at the dining room table, if you don't want your dog to, be underfoot while you're trying to get dinner ready, any of those, you can teach them to station instead. So to start to teach them, I always begin with shaping. Shaping, and I'm going to demonstrate this with you guys, for you guys with Jane. So shaping is essentially teaching the dog to figure out on their own what it is that you want them to do. And the reason why I start with this is because I want my dog to learn or to actually think, okay, it's going to the bed, lying down and staying there. That's what I'm supposed to do. Please don't disregard this clown back here. I want my dog to actually think that through and figure out what it is that I want them to do. So that's why I start with shaping. Next, I use a little bit of luring and then capturing. So I'm just capturing the behavior. So I'm going to show you guys how I shaped Jane to a bed. Those of you in middle school or higher have actually already tried this. Because Jane already knows how to go to a bed, I'm going to use this trampoline here. I've never shaped her to it. I think she'll get it pretty quickly just because she has a concept of stationing, but I think we can still kind of work through what it is that, the steps that we need to go through to start. So to begin with, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the trampoline directly in front of me, and if Jane happens to step on it, which she likely will simply because it is directly in front of me, I'm going to click for that. And right now, I can start by not even clicking for her getting on it. I can start by just reinforcing her putting her front legs on it. If your dog happens to just sit there and stare at you and not get onto the bed, just wait. And what you want to do is click for any sort of behavior other than that sit. That's what Jane did originally. So when I first started this with her, she would just sit next to the bed and stare at me. And she stayed like that for a long time. I didn't give her any feedback or anything other than the clicker and treat. So all I would do is wait until she would either get up or even move a paw or look at the bed or even look away from me. So what I was doing by clicking for those little tiny incremental behaviors, I was telling Jane, I want you to do something more than just sit there, okay? I want you to figure out what it takes to hear that clicker and get the treats. So Jane is now consistently coming to the trampoline, which is great, and she's sitting as well. So what we do want eventually is after our dog is consistently getting onto the bed, whatever it is that you're using, you can use a little platform like this trampoline. Once your dog is consistently going there, then you're going to wait for a sit. You notice that I did not tell her to sit. I just waited for her, once again, to figure this out on her own, because I don't want eventually to have to say, go to your bed, and then tell her to sit, and then tell her to stay, okay? I want all of that to be pieced into one cue, okay? So now Jane is consistently going to the trampoline and sitting. If you want a down instead, you can wait for that. I actually don't need her to lie down. I'm perfectly okay with her sitting. I want you to decide what you prefer and what your dog prefers. So Jane is happier sitting and watching me prepare food as opposed to lying down. I am totally fine with that. As long as she's staying on the bed, I don't care what position she's in. So this is entirely up to you, and I would base it on what your dog is more comfortable with. If you have a very active dog who has a hard time just sitting still, a down might be more appropriate. Or you might have a lazy dog who prefers to lie down. So Okay, so be it, have them lie down. Okay, so now she's consistently coming here and sitting. So now I want to start adding duration. So you've noticed that every single time so far, I have clicked and then tossed the treat off of the trampoline. I'm doing that because I wanted to teach her that getting onto the trampoline is what I want. Now that she's consistently going to the trampoline, I want to build value for staying on the trampoline. And that's key here for teaching them this. So I clicked 4 times and just treated her directly on the trampoline. I'm going to reset her, so I'm going to click and toss it off. So you want to do that a few times, get them off, have them come back on. I'm going to wait for her to sit, and then I'm just going to reinforce her for being on this. So I'm just going to click and treat as long as she stays on here. And once you have your dog consistently going on, you can start adding a little movement, okay? Because realistically, I'm not going to just be standing in front of the bed when my guests come over, or when I'm cooking dinner, or when I'm, whatever it is. So you do want to start adding some movement, and you're just reinforcing your dog for staying on. If your dog gets off, that's no big deal, okay? If she were to get off, I'm going to make it easier for her again. So I'm going to get directly in front of the trampoline. I'm going to reward her for coming to it, reward her for staying on here, and I'm just going to continue to do that once I feel that she can be comfortable with me moving around. And moving around could start with just a little side step like that and coming back, okay? So that's how we're going to start this, and then you're just going to eventually, you're building duration, you're going to start moving around. When I taught Jane this for when I was preparing food, I did 2 training sessions shaping her. The first training session was really just kind of teaching her the concept of going to the bed, and then the second one I kind of added a little bit of duration like this. That's all I did, okay? And then I started to apply it to the real world, okay? So, as far as, good girl, okay. As far as applying it to the real world goes, okay, so now I want you to imagine the scenario where you want your dog to station onto something. So, like I said, for me it was when I was preparing food. It's kind of, if we're all going to be realistic here, right? For me to prepare my dog's food with the clicker and the treats and shaping her, I'm not capable of that, okay? It's a lot of work getting my dog's food ready. I can't be standing there in front of the bed the whole time clicking and treating for her. So that's when I started using Lure, okay? So with Lure, that is, the way we teach a lot of the beginning behaviors in class. So with Lure, I'm just using a cookie, bringing her up here, having her lie down. And then I'm reinforcing that, okay? So I lured her to it, I'm gonna continue to reinforce. So I want you to imagine now that I'm preparing their food, okay? And I can simply keep rewarding her while she's here. If she were to get up, okay, I'm making food, I see that she gets up, I can just take a treat, bring her back up here, and start feeding her from here again, okay? So that was the next step that I used. Because if we're going to be realistic as well, shaping really requires our dogs to kind of figure this out on our own. We have to be there. We have to have perfect timing in order to give them the feedback that they need. And when you're doing 2 things at once, you can't do that. So luring is perfectly fine. I would use luring only if your dog is consistently staying on the bed. So if Jane were to get up every time I stood up and started preparing the food, she's not ready for this yet. And in that case, I would manage the situation by not having her practice, barking while I was preparing the food. I would probably put her in a different room or a crate or something until I thought that she was ready to handle this. Like I said, fortunately for Jane, it only took 2 shaping training sessions for me to be able to start doing this and apply it to real life. So that's the way we would do this. So I want you to imagine, okay, let's say that you're working with your dog with guests coming over. All right, you did a couple shaping sessions. I would set up the first scenario, maybe have someone come over and practice going in and out of the house. And what you're gonna do is just whenever you see them coming to the door, you're gonna bring your dog, have them sit or lie down, and then you're just gonna start rewarding. Okay, and you're gonna reward, and the person's gonna come in, and when the person comes in, that's when you're gonna give a whole lot of reward, good job, and then they're gonna leave, okay? And that's how you're gonna build on this. Eventually, our goal is to not have to stand with our dog constantly rewarding them. And you'll see, I'm gonna show you a video. It's from 2 weeks ago, so it was when she was only 10 weeks old. And this is real life. This is, I got up in the morning, I'm in my pajamas, I let her out to go to the bathroom, and then I'm preparing the dog's food. And you're gonna see how I balance the two. She makes a couple mistakes. She's 10 weeks old, that's gonna happen. And she's a dog, that's gonna happen. You'll see that I actually kind of help her work through those mistakes. So at one point I kind of walk her back to the bed and show her where it is, but just very, very vaguely with my body language. Another time she figured it out on her own. And the key here, which I've already mentioned, but I want to stress again, is the building the value to being on the object, okay? So all the reward comes here. And eventually the dog is gonna find being here is much more rewarding than anything else. And then eventually we start fading the treats. Like I said, you'll see this in the video where I'm not treating her as often. So we start fading the treats. So we're feeding them less and less. And what this does is it teaches the dog, this is a very relaxing behavior for them to do. It teaches the dog that in these exciting situations, this is what I've practiced doing. This feels good because I get treats and I get reward and I, get lots of good things. So it becomes their natural decision in these kind of scenarios. So that's our ultimate goal, is we want to teach our dog that when I don't know what to do, when things are getting too exciting, when I'm too hungry, this is where I should go, because this is where good things happen. And when you get to the point, you're not going to have to do this constant reward, but you have to make sure that you're teaching your dog to be there. And I definitely think in any case, with any dog, some reward at some point is always important. So if, when Jane is 5 years old and she always goes and lays down when I'm preparing food, once in a while, it is not gonna hurt for me to pay her for doing that. Go over, give her a treat, or give her a good chew thing or something like that, or just praise her and tell her, what a good dog, you were so good. That's really gonna help them, throughout their entire lives to still see value here. So I hope this was helpful for you guys. Stick around, because like I said, I'm gonna have that real life video that's gonna be right after this. If you have any questions, just post them in the comments. I love answering dog questions, so please ask. And also video. If you wanna send me any of your videos of where your dog is at right now with stationing, I can give you some feedback and help you out to figure this out, okay? So thanks for watching, guys, and happy training.